So I think I corrected the place that I didn't have to pay parking, but I paid for it. Because I was afraid that I was going to see it.
I
am, man.
If we're doing it 4 times, like 5 or 6 days.
Across the street on the side on the 12th.
Yeah, they
It
just
says
like basically you only have
you can't
energy
park there Monday through Friday at all, but there's nothing that we can.
and laundry.
And there's like 4 cars there. I can park between the 4 cars.
Yeah, man. Do you like you gotta go to different apartments and stuff?
You got a tan.
Spiking, yeah, cycling will do that.
So can you send me a link? Because I'm looking.
Yeah, so I paid for the parking, but then it was extra. There's not something that says that you can't there you pay. It just says Monday through Friday.
Oh yeah, is that?
Wait, you had on
This street,
This street,
across the street, it's one way, across the street. This building over here, where car
Oh, by the school.
Yeah.
I just know if you go up more.
But I went ahead and put the parking over in.
For a while, it was like,
I need a $40 ticket.
Okay. All right, we're going to kick things back into gear. See if I can get everybody to like sit down at their seats and end conversations. That would be fantastic because we have a lot of material to go over today. I definitely want to reiterate over a lot of things that we did last time in class because it was a lot of information. So we're going to start with a JavaScript cheat sheet and go through the basics from the very, very beginning. So if you remember last time, I told everybody that JavaScript has multiple types. And these multiple types can be associated with a variable. So in JavaScript, let me actually start sharing.
Are you going to be streaming your?
Yes, I posted that in the discussion.
Okay.
Cool. Here we go. Cool. So this isn't necessarily a type, but it's a reference. We have something called a var. A var in JavaScript is a reference to an object. An example of that would be something like, let's see, var x equals string test. Remember, a var can be associated with any type in JavaScript. So the different types we have in JavaScript would be a string, which is typically denoted as a double quote. You have an integer, which is just a simple number. You have a float, which is a decimal, 1.1. You have a Boolean type, which is true or false. And then you have a dictionary. Well, actually in JavaScript it's called just an object, a JavaScript object, which has this type of syntax where if you remember earlier, this is a key value relationship. The value could be any object type. So it could be a string, it could be an integer, it could be a float, it could be a Boolean, it could be another JavaScript object. So when you see that syntax, brackets, a key, and a value, that's what it's denoting. You can access object values like so, where let's say you have a var object equals cat tabby. You can access values within that object by doing object.cat, and this would give you the string tabby. So in real time, if I was to do that if I wanted to see this in action, just for like testing purposes, what would I do? Where would I go? Correct. I would go to my developer tools. So let's open that up. Let's just go to google.com, clear this stuff, and you would practice your JavaScript within your console. So I'm going to create a variable called object cat. With the value tabby. Now I know that object is created. I could do object.cat, and that would give me my string tabby. Any questions on the different JavaScript types? Everything making sense so far? Sure.
So the string is usually denoted with a quotation marks.
Correct.
Then you also, like the key and the value,
value, you also keep those. What was this?
Sure.
For the example?
This
Are
is just
those-
for the example. And actually, I forget, but let's see.
So,
Let's see if I can actually use integer in JavaScript as a key. Let's see, object. Oh yeah, look at that. Yep. You can use an integer as a key in JavaScript, and you would do .1. Expected number. So wait a second. Okay, so you want to keep, I believe typically in JavaScript for objects, your keys or strings is your value that can be any other object type. The reason this worked is because of JavaScript can sometimes do funny things, and it's inferring that this number one is turning this one into a string, pretty much is what it's doing. That's why when I did .1, it said it's unexpected number. It didn't understand what I'm trying to say. So I had to access it a different way as a string number one, and that gave me the value tabby.
so it's a string inside an object.
Correct.
I think I'm still confused as to when you choose which one, like whether it's an integer, a float, boolean. I guess that'll get.
Depends on your use case.
So that'll get more clear. Like that part still seems very like.
Yeah, so for example, a website counter, you're going to want that to be a number. It wouldn't make sense as a string because you're going to increment it by 1 every single time.
So that would be an integer, right?
So that would be an integer. Correct. Float depends really on your use case. Maybe you're referring to the price of an object on your website. A shirt costs $12.99. You would use a float because it's a decimal. So things like that.
Float, we learned, I thought, in the other, when we were doing, was it HTML or CSS? Yeah, that it floats an object somewhere, so that's confusing to me.
Oh,
It's the
yes,
same
yes.
term.
It's the same term but different definition. Yeah,
so
because I believe
that's
CSS, you're floating objects to the left, to the right.
Yeah.
That's placement. This is strictly math.
And Boolean would be the that you were showing us before,
With if conditionals.
the if condition.
Correct. Whether a user is logged in true or false. Cool. Good questions. Any other questions?
You're going to copy this out? Or
Yes, I'm gonna copy this all out and Slack it all out.
I would have it as a reference for.
Sure. And let me know if it's not verbose enough, and I'll add comments and all that stuff. So the next thing we talked about was functions, and the first function type we learned about was an unnamed function. And actually, is that 2 N's? Yeah, unnamed function. Also known as an anonymous function. This is a function with no name. You would create that like so. This is a function with no name. It's just the keyword function, open parentheses, close parentheses, and then brackets. Is within the scope of these brackets that it does whatever logic it is that you want it to do. And in the case that we saw before, it was incrementing counters, decrementing counters from last class's exercises. There's 2 other ways you can create a function. You can have a named function, which we did last class as well.
We haven't done unnamed.
We have done unnamed.
We have.
So that's what you threw into the click events.
Okay.
Yep. Correct. Dot click takes a function as a parameter. Yep.
Right. Like
Whatever you name the function.
Right. Like if you define the function first, then that's named, and then when you.
So that's correct. So you would define, if you want a named function, you would define it before you actually use it. You only use an anonymous function when you want to use it immediately within that line of code. Because if you don't, there's no way to reference it. How can you reference something that has no name? So a name. So you would use, well, let me get back into, I'll go through an example when you would use a named function versus an unnamed function. But let me just show you the different types. So let's say this is function counter equals anonymous function counting logic. So now my variable counter is equal to an unnamed function, thereby naming it. So to reference this specific function, I would have to use a variable counter. So technically, I've given this unnamed function a name. And then some shorthand to do the exact same logic would be just to name it immediately within the same line that you're declaring it. So instead of referring it to a var, I'm just naming it immediately function, counter, open and close parentheses, and then the brackets. And I can still refer to this particular function later on in my code.
But right now, the second option, it's not taking counter as a variable, right? It's just taking it as
It is technically a variable now. It's a variable you can reference for this function.
Okay.
It's just that I didn't specifically say var counter. This is like shorthand. I wanted to give you guys both examples because you're going to see both examples. Most likely this one versus the other because this is more verbose. There's more extra you need to type versus this shorthand over here. Now, on the different cases and when you would use either or, let me actually move this down. That would be like in the case of events. Let's say the events that we've so far played around with is the click event. Specifically, the click function in JavaScript. So an example of that would be, let's see, I have reference, let's say a button, and I'm using the jQuery signifier to get this object in the HTML using the pound sign because I'm referring to it by its ID, not by its class name. I'm going to do .click. .click is a function within JavaScript, within jQuery. And correct me if I say JavaScript versus jQuery because I'm going to muddle them up. But within these parentheses is where you pass in a function. The cases where we've seen this function has been like so. Within here, let's say, I don't know, your JavaScript file is already getting pretty long. You don't really want to, you're not really sure. There's really no reason for you to define this function beforehand. You could define an anonymous function right here within these parentheses and pass it directly in. And that's where you would have your, I don't know, counting logic or something. This function within these parentheses is an anonymous function. The reason you didn't need to name it is because it doesn't need a name. You're using it immediately as it's being created. Let's say there's counting logic that you want to reuse in multiple clicks. That's when you would use a named function. So my example of that would be, let's say var counter equals function, open close parentheses, counting logic. I could then use that in multiple on-click events. So I could have button 1 uses the counter function, button 2 uses the same counter function. You don't have to define it over and over again because it's already been declared once. I declared it once up here, and I'm going to reuse it multiple times in multiple buttons. That's when you would use a named function versus an anonymous function, because typically an anonymous function is for a one-time action that you're not going to reuse over and over again. Correct, like an inline edit for CSS. You don't need to associate that with the class name because it's a one-time deal. Does that make sense? Cool. I wanted to also go over jQuery because I think there was a little bit of confusion where jQuery came into play and where JavaScript came into play. I'm going to draw this on the board. So what we have been learning generally has been JavaScript. JavaScript. But jQuery is the wrapper on top of that. jQuery provides us with a bunch of helper functions so that we don't have to write a lot of jQuery. A lot of JavaScript. You can think of jQuery as the equivalent to Bootstrap.
That's what I was going to ask you.
For CSS. There's a bunch of helper functions that you can use to expedite the code that you're writing. jQuery was really, really popular for a very, very long time because writing raw JavaScript can be very painful, and it really helped developers' lives. Now we have options. We have like things like React. We have things like Angular that also help expedite jQuery development. I mean JavaScript development. But jQuery is still pretty good. You can use it for a lot of basic things, and hence why we're going to be using it for like on-click events. We're going to be using it for I guess like transitions, animations, things like that. So just think of it as a wrapper on top of JavaScript in the same way Bootstrap is. So to go back to the beginning, let's see. Is this slide deck available to the class? No, you want to slack this one out?
Yeah, this.
Or is that the same one from Thursday?
This is not the same one from Thursday. Would one of you mind throwing that in the class discussion? Cool. So jQuery can be downloaded or added from a CDN. A CDN is just pretty much a downloadable link for your website. So let me make this bigger so you guys can see it. Yeah, sure. Cool. All right. So as we said earlier, there's two places you could define your JavaScript. I guess the recommended flow is that you define your JavaScript at the bottom, at the very last line of your body tag, so that it gets loaded into your website after all of your HTML tags have been created. There might be a use case for you to have JavaScript before within your head tag if you're doing like analytics or something. So you need your analytic pieces to be loaded first, but it's a case-by-case scenario. So for our particular purposes, we're going to load JavaScript at the bottom in the body tag, and then right below that, we're going to have our own custom JavaScript over here. The reason we're loading JavaScript first is because, as I said earlier, the reason we're loading jQuery first before our custom JavaScript file is because JavaScript operates top-down. It's going to first execute this line over here of jQuery, make it available to us within our own custom JavaScript file. If you loaded this after your JavaScript file, you would see a lot of errors saying it doesn't understand what that $sign is. That denotes jQuery. So as we saw earlier, jQuery selectors, you can have a $sign that refers to an ID. You can have a dot notation that refers to a class. You can create individual HTML tags. You don't need to worry about that just yet. I believe you probably do that later on in other classes, but for our own purposes, the two most important pieces in this slide is how we select HTML tags in our HTML document. That would be using an ID or using a class for a group of objects. Let's see, we've already talked about that, and that's as much as I want to do on this particular slide. So now, when it comes to jQuery, give an example of what that looks like. We know that the $sign denotes that jQuery is readily available to be used. We know that there's two ways to select an object, one using a pound name, select one unique, I guess, tag from HTML. We know that there's one for a group of tags, which would be a dot class name. Let's actually make this ID, which is select a group of elements. I think that's the correct term. Elements from HTML. Let's actually name this element. jQuery also gives us access to helper functions like the .click function. So jQuery event functions like .click, which takes a function. And let's see if we can find a good resource for JavaScript, jQuery event functions. Let's see. Yeah, they have the official jQuery API document. Let's go there. There we go. And this would give you all the different types of event functions that you can use with jQuery. So I'm going to select this out as well. And I will add it over here. Cool. Let's see, what else? Let's go take a look at these slides. There's CSS transitions, but we'll get to that later. I want to actually hop right into the exercise, but on what you've seen so far on our cheat sheet, whether it's types, functions, events, and just basic jQuery functions. Oh, actually, there's one more. There's one more thing. We also talked about attributes in the last class, at the very end. HTML element attribute manipulation. jQuery has a helper function called adder, where you pass in a object that you want to edit. And I forget the syntax, so let's go pull that up from last class's exercise. Let's move this over here. Nope, that's not it. Here we go. It's just blah, 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 blah. Okay. It takes an object that we define up above as a key value reference. So an example of that would be, let's say we're going to grab a link tag, which has an ID link, adder, href, and then the URL. This is the example that we saw previously in the bootstrap switching exercise, where we grabbed a link tag from the head and then directly manipulated the href URL within that example. And that looked like so. You defined a link to Bootswatch over here. It had an href to the Darkly style, and in real time we were able to edit that by accessing that link and directly changing the attribute href to other styles like Slate, Solar, and Superhero by using an on-click event on buttons on the screen. So I want us to actually do this exercise because we didn't get the chance to finish it last time in class. Say what? Yeah, didn't even really get a chance to start it. So, question? Is there a question over there? Oh, okay, cool. So we're going to actually do this exercise just to reiterate what we've gone over in this cheat sheet. But before we start, are there any questions on the cheat sheet so far? I'm about to slack it out. Thank you, thank you. I figured this would be good to go over, at least in the beginning of class. So let's see. So let me slack this out. And resources are in discussion. Resources, all right. All right, so you guys should have that. And now I want us to do. Did we already upload the zip of the of exercise 5 last class? The whole folder. Okay, cool. So you have the solved and you have the unsolved. Good. The cheat sheet?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
It's not empty.
Yes.
What is that?
Oh, this is just it's a syntax. How can I explain it? Let's look it up. Markup syntax. .md. No, that's not it. Markup language. So it's just a different syntax for doing documents. I'm trying to think of the best place to look at this. If you go to GitHub, a lot of repos have a .md file in their README. Let's go look at something from my job. Here we go, readme.md. It's a way to pretty much format a text document in your repo. The raw syntax would be this, over here where hashtag references like a header, double hashtag is like maybe like a, I don't know, smaller header, and then you have these backticks for like code. So it then all renders on the front end like so. So it's just a different style of doing documents. All right. So yes, everybody take a look at exercise 5 that was slacked out previously in that zip. You guys should have the solved and the unsolved sections, but we're going to work on the unsolved obviously today because I want you guys to use that cheat sheet and be able to add an on-click event to these buttons over here. Right now, we only have one button. Oh yeah, you need to add 2 more buttons here and give the IDs of that theme. Remember, it's at bootswatch.com, so you can go there as a reference to what themes are available to you. In the unsolved, you only have 1 button here called solar. You're going to add 2, so just choose 2 other random themes. And in the solved.js, you're going to add on-click events to those individual themes, and you're going to edit that href attribute that you're going to see in your HTML link with the ID theme style sheet. If you need me to say that one more time, I will. So, in the unsolved folder, what we're going to do is that we're going to grab this link tag within our JavaScript by its ID. And then we're going to edit the href, which is the URL attribute, to be to be other themes within Bootswatch. So you would need to go to bootswatch.com to know what themes are available to you. But to be able to do this action, you're going to need to create 2 more buttons. One has been created for you with the ID Solar, but you're going to create 2 more based on the themes available to you at bootswatch.com, and you're going to change this URL to match those within your unsolved.js file code here. So refer to your cheat sheet. You do have the solved folder in case you do get lost, but please try to do this on your own. I'm going to give this about 20 minutes for us to do. It's going to be a really good refresher for the rest of the class.
The solve that you showed
Yes.
you're using different elements to what tags, like link, and then use one that I think is meta. I can't remember.
Like this? Because you're going to use that.
Oh, no, I meant on the solve.
Oh, we can take a look at that real quick.
Yeah, I mean, I was not to copy those because no, I was looking at Thursday. I just saw it.
Okay. Cool.
So I need to go back to it, so I don't know what it is other than when I open it, I know I got the right one.
Cool.
All right.
Oh boy, we got some latecomers. I definitely can't go over all that again. But I'm gonna slack out the recording today. So for all my latecomers, definitely please watch this video. I went over all of the basics of JavaScript. I also slacked out a cheat sheet that you'll find in your resources. We are currently working on exercise 5 from last class, the unsolved section. Refer to the cheat sheet and let me know if you have any questions.
You probably looked at the song.
Yeah, you were looking at the solved.
Is it an hour?
20 minutes. So we'll
So we're supposed to create the buttons too?
supposed to create 2 new buttons. Yes, but that's just copy and paste. You would have to visit the Bootswatch website to see what themes are available. Oh yes, do you want to introduce yourself to the class so that they know that you're the TA? I mean, just do like in general.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Yeah, you know.
Boot swatch, right? Shoes on.
Oh, nice. That works.
All you really need is the
And we can choose anything we want, right? We're just replacing dark blue with whatever we want. Download? Why do we need to download? We don't need to download, we just need to.
You just need a
Right,
URL.
just preview it and look
the
in the.
URL to it.
Yeah.
thing I forgot to say. I noticed some people are using Dreamweaver, some people are using Sublime, some people are using Visual Studio. For the purposes of this class, could everyone download Sublime? It's definitely going to make my life a lot easier trying to debug what's going on. I've never used Dreamweaver before, and it's definitely slowing me down trying to figure out what y'all's problems are. So you can download Sublime Text. Actually, I think I posted it earlier in class discussion. Yes, let's do that for the next exercise.
Thank you.
Cool. But I'll repost it one more time. No, I've had mine unregistered for years. I've never paid for it. We're at the halfway point. You should have already created your 2 extra buttons. If you need a reference of what extra types, what other styles are available to you, just go to bootswatch.com and click the down arrow on themes. It's really just copy and pasting that button tag and then replacing the ID, of course, with the new style that you guys want to create an on-click listener to. You should all be working on your on-click events for the buttons now. And you do have the solved solution, so if you get incredibly lost, feel free to just reference it on how to replace the attribute href. But definitely try to do it by yourself before you do that.
With the event alone, or do we always have to students like reference ID or class?
You need to reference the ID or class source because you're attaching that event to an object, an HTML element.
Okay, and
Yeah.
can you repeat the ID twice inside, like I'm saying solar, ID solar, like function, and then I'm saying solar again. Is that redundant?
No, that's perfectly fine.
It is?
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, if you want it to be like, I guess, cleaner,
Yeah.
then just worry about getting.
So does it look like this? Superhero slash bootstrap.css?
Yes, pretty much.
Okay, so then you want to go into here, it's the superhero, you want to name it, and then you go to bootstrap CSS.
That's what I should do, thank you, that's what's
So
killing
we
me.
can change that.
That's why it's not
Because it's a reference to something else.
Otherwise, instead of having to create like that.
You would
Oh, that's beautiful.
Mhm.
Bootstrap CSS, there it is. Alright, that may be,
Yeah.
I'll make a big difference on that type.
I just call it.
So,
That's the ID. If you're getting the ID. So now it's good. So if you want to do it like this. Let's dive on it.
oh my god. I go back and forth to see what I missed. I missed the amount from,
I'll do it. Uh, 5 more minutes for this activity, and then we'll move on.
Well, here it says unexpected, instead solve.
Looks like maybe and then CSS
Here, check with this, and alter it. Well, what happens is what it does, it changes the which maybe this, because what I grabbed from there was,
So let's take a look at this. So
I got one too. I got one back then. That's what it's supposed to look like. I think, but there's like wonky stuff going on.
so now you do that
So,
basically.
here to look and like, go back to that chair.
And now we got to take some time to use.
So, like, here's what it looks like. And then when I hit space lab, which if you look at here, drop the space lab, CSS, it's showing me like what things should look like. So then I hit space lab.
Okay, that's great.
But it's weird stuff. You know what I mean? Should I not worry about it? Or
Okay, now go to
go ahead and start your Sublime text so that's what we can move on. Under view, did you try and split the view? Because my loads, yeah, my loads are. You're like, yeah. That's why it's Sublime. I got it to do something. It's different on the page, but it's, I haven't gotten any.
when you click solar, you're changing the attribute you're using, or you're changing the attribute somewhere else. And so it's oh, so take you're changing the style sheet, right?
That's fine.
Okay. So,
Well, I spent the first class of the first half of the activity sliding out. I hope you guys enjoyed it.
so we're gonna now move on. Could you raise your hands and let me know how many people actually got through the activity? Okay, so not a lot of people. So what really was the blockers for this one? What do you think really like held you up? Knowing what to put?
I really stumbled with remembering when I had hashtags and when I had the like unsigned or whatever.
Oh, okay.
Putting it in the right order, and then I kept going back to look at the solve to see what I missed.
Okay. Okay.
I'm still a little lost on the logic, but I think it'll come.
Okay. Well then, I definitely want us to all at least be consistent on what we're using to edit these exercises. So, could everybody go to sublimetext.com/3? I posted the URL in class discussion, and then download based on your OS that you're using this text editor. That's the one that I've been using all day in class.
So the one, the top version.
Yes. For me, it would be OS X. If you have a Windows machine, just choose the Windows button. Cool. And we should all have Chrome, right? That would be the developer tools that that we were going to use, at least just to be consistent, so we're not like being held up and trying to debug other things.
So when I open up my Sublime, it doesn't look like yours. It does, and I'm just not sure if it's the right thing.
See? No, that's correct.
And I had to go to view to make the sidebar. Was there anything else I'm supposed to make as well?
Nope, that's it. So now you could use like the lines and drag it and change it.
Okay, so we should do that. Right?
Okay. Could everyone raise their hands if they've downloaded Sublime Text? Downloaded Sublime Text. So we're going to use Sublime Text for the rest of the class. I don't want to see Dreamweaver.
Is it okay if they have this?
Yeah, that's fine. That's pretty much the same.
Which activities all from today into the open file, like the things that
Oh,
drags them?
yeah, you could. So the activity zip that I slacked out earlier, you could just drop the entire folder in there. Okay. So if you have Sublime Text or Visual Code, it doesn't really matter. One of the things that you can do is you can drag and drop your entire activities folder into Sublime Text, and that's how you have this view that I have over here where I'm able to see all my files. And as you click on them, it'll populate on the right side. And if you want to open this up in the browser, you would right-click on the file, open in browser, and that will open up in your browser. It will launch Chrome if Chrome is your default browser. So Chrome, of course, will be the developer tools that we're using for the rest of the day. So when we work on the next activity, I only want to see everyone using Sublime Text. It'll be a lot easier for me to try and figure out what's going on in your individual codes. So in the next exercise, and I will select this one out. Let's see. Do you guys have all these activities over here from day 2? Okay. I didn't. I slacked all the activities for day 3.
So you did today's
Okay.
activities, but then the last class we still have to load that one into Sublime as well?
Yes. Because we're going to be working on exercise 7 from last class, from day 2.
Okay, so give me some.
If you don't have it, I can slack it out again, but you guys should already have it. It would be exercise number 7, STU conditionals. You guys see it? Number 7.
Because we had one that was wrong, remember?
Mm-hmm. Does everyone have exercise 7 conditionals? Cool. So in this particular activity, it's exactly the same as activity we just did. Let me close other tabs. Except we're only having 2 themes that we care about that we're going to switch, and we're going to use conditionals. I'm going to reiterate what a conditional is because it's a conditional that's actually doing this change versus us having separate on-click events for both buttons. So let's see. To reiterate on what a conditional is, it is the if-else syntax where the value within the parentheses of an if has to evaluate to true for it to do the logic within the brackets. If this statement does not evaluate to true, it will then end up in the else block, which is kind of like a catch-all. And then do the logic that you have over there. You don't have to have an else. You could just have an if and call it a day. But it provides you options to be able to have divergent logic within your website. So we're going to briefly look at how this works in conditionals, the exercise that you're working on. Within this exercise, and actually, this exercise has some new syntax, so I'm going to go over the new syntax first before we worry about conditionals. Within the unsolved folder, you guys should all have that available to you. Let me know if you don't have it. You're going to see that they are making a reference to a group of objects, a group of HTML elements with the class name, theme, button. We're not using an ID anymore in this specific example. In the previous exercise that we just worked on, we create an on-click event for each individual button by its ID. Now we're assigning a click event to all the buttons on the HTML page. So when we look at unsolved.html, we're going to see that the two buttons there is one is slate, as we see over here, and the one is solar. They both have unique IDs, which is fine, but the class name is theme button. So in unsolved.js, we're going to say get all the buttons with the theme button class name, assign an on-click event, and then do this function of work. What we did before was we had multiple IDs that we were referring to. It's more work. There's more code you're writing because it's for each individual button. Now we're simplifying things by doing the same logic for all buttons. So in the very first line in unsolved, you're going to see some brand new syntax, and that's going to be this keyword. This is a special keyword in JavaScript. What this denotes is that because now you're associating an on-click event to all buttons, you need to know at any given point which button was clicked in the user flow. So this object will tell you that this button is what was clicked. This button's ID is the theme. So when I click slate, it would be that button. Solar would be this button. They're both unique buttons, but they have the same on-click event associated with them. That's why we need to know, because we're not assigning these to individual IDs anymore, we need to know at what given point which button was clicked. This keyword tells us that, and I'm going to put that in our cheat sheet. Interacted with. It is the current element being interacted with. So when I click on slate, this will provide me the slate element. I don't have to refer to it by its ID. I'm going to access the attribute ID. This is a different use case of attribute. Before, we used attribute to replace a URL. Now we're accessing a value from an attribute. I will also place this on the cheat sheet. This will give us the value of the ID. So in this case, when I click on solar, and this is the HTML over here, what would attribute solar give me? I mean, what would the attribute ID give me for the solar button? Yes, it would give me this value over here, because I'm saying for this button, give me the value of the attribute ID, which for the solar button happens to be solar. That's what's happening in this JavaScript over here. So,
Oh, but where do you reference the actual data?
What? What do you mean?
Where do you find solar?
That's within your HTML. You've already predefined that. So these buttons already exist. You're now attaching an event listener to them.
Yeah, no, I just meant the link to the field. Because like
Oh.
before we had links to
Correct. So we haven't gotten there yet.
Okay.
Yes. No problem. So now we're associating solar to this variable called theme. And then we're going to now, let me make this bigger, store a reference to the element with the ID theme style sheet. So this style link is going to reference what? What is style link going to reference? It's going to reference the link HTML tag. So if we look at the HTML, we're going to see that this link tag in the header has an ID theme style sheet. We are associating that to a variable. So this object will always be that link tag from the front end. Questions on why we're doing this?
Not my real data, but is it more convenient to first define all your variables up top and
Yep.
then
If you know you're going to be using them over and over again, just define them in the beginning. Yep. So now we know we have the theme ID, and we know we have the style link object, but is referenced by this variable over here. And I'm actually going to change this this dollar sign, because I don't like it. So we're just going to have style link. Then in your code, because you guys are going to write this code, well, actually, no, let's write this code together. Right here, we're going to provide some conditionals that interact with the theme and the style link. So within here, I'm going to add an if case, and I want you guys to follow along and type this out with me. So raise your hand if you're not ready to start typing away, and if you're not, one of the TAs will help you get there. Cool. All right. So when I walk around, I hope everybody has if on their files. You know what? I think I will walk around just to make sure everyone has if written down.
So while you're walking, can you just explain what we're about to do right
Yeah, sure. So what we're about to write is, we're going to duplicate the logic that we just did in the previous activity, where we replaced the href tag with the different individual styles, except we're going to use an if conditional to add it. Before, we had 3 individual click events for 3 individual buttons. Now we have 1 event this year for all buttons. So we need to be able to say the slate button is this link, the solar button is that. This is actually less code. It's more succinct. It shows you the divergence a lot of
now? Is one better than the other?
Debatable. Depends on whether you're working with other developers or on your side.
Mine is.
Yes, you have to have that discussion.
I didn't hit enter. Autofill? It didn't tell me. If
You gotta type it.
I did type it.
All right. You guys have the black mode?
Yeah.
So, all right. Good to go. You guys good to go. I just want to All right. So now I have the warm and fuzzies that you guys have Sublime. Cool. Can I bring everybody back in? We're going to start typing this out together. Cool. So you guys are going to write. Could I get everybody's attention one more time? Great. That would be perfect. All right. So we're going to write our very first if conditional. And remember, everything inside of this if block has to be true. Are you guys familiar with triple equals? Okay. So let's start from the beginning. So in JavaScript, you need to be able to compare 2 elements. We know that there are 2 elements we care about in this specific example. We care that there's a slate button, and we care that there's a solar button. So we know this theme can either be 1 or 2. It can either be slate or it can be solar. You need to be able to have logic that handles both cases. So we're going to say theme triple equals solar. What that denotes is if theme is equal to solar, and we're going to use that what signifies the equal conditional is triple equals. I'm not even going to get into double equals, just use triple equals. It's more strict. So if the theme is equal to solar, then we're going to do some action. So right now we're just going to do console.log solar. I want you guys to save that and then open it up in your browser. And I want you to see within your developer tools, it prints out solar when you click solar. So when I go to my HTML, my unsolved HTML, open in browser, I'm going to open up my developer tools, and I'm going to click solar, and you will see solar log. If you don't see solar log, one of the TAs will get you there.
It should change to solar. Is that what you're asking us to try?
It's just console logging Solar. We're not even replacing the theme just
That's
yet.
not even, okay.
Yes.
It's not opening.
So within your developer tools, you'll see console log Solar.
There we go.
Yep, just console.log Solar. When you click the Solar button, you'll see it populate over here.
Is that what you're under the And what should I do? Solar.
Just Solar.
And then what do I do?
Solar.
Oh.
Console logging it. Do you see it?
Yeah, no, I got this.
To whatever you had it last time, so you can so then you got to click on solar. Click on solar over here. Click on solar. Solar should pop up there.
There you go. Because you attach the envelope.
I'm so glad you said that. I still don't know how to use it.
Right, go to your so we click on solar.
So when you click on the Solar button, you should see Solar console log out.
And we don't.
Then there's a problem, and I can help you fix it.
Minus C.
Triple equals solar. Yep.
A little long solar, and I can see it. So fast.
Actually, let's open up the developer tools. So yeah,
And then when I hover over it, and now it is. It didn't. I did. I want the extra teacher attention.
Developer tools, console, yeah. And there we click, it should say
It is.
what's the church trade?
See it?
There you go.
Oh, okay.
Because you're logging out.
Yeah,
Does anyone need any help right now?
All right, I'll give everyone 1 more minute just to get that together, and then we'll write our second conditional.
We just messed up. I feel like 99%.
That's usually what it is.
Yeah, the name. Okay, so you have to. Change that to. No. Get it outside.
Dreamweaver, it has a little. I like Dreamweaver, but that's really fortunate.
Okay, so now we have it console logging out Solar. We wanted to also be able to console log out Slate. So I want you guys to copy and paste this if statement that you have for Solar and replace Solar with Slate. So that when you click Slate, it prints Slate. When you click Solar, it prints Solar.
It'll still say if.
Yep, we're still using if statements. So you copy and paste this, like so, replace it with Slate. So when I refresh my page, I click Solar, it says Solar. I click Slate, it says Slate. It is.
It is.
I'm just doing this in steps.
Okay. No, that's great. I was just asking, like, am I doing this up or is it really?
Yeah.
Yeah, I have one called some data too. So it's gotta be because that thing's highlighted. So it's telling us that there's something wrong with the bracket thing that's highlighted.
Remember, for this one, I just copy and pasted our previous if conditional and replaced solar with slave. Save it, open it up in your browser, and click both buttons. You should see them populate in your console.
Just another if.
Just another if.
How do you close it? Oh, it doesn't matter. It's just ifs.
Yeah, it's just ifs.
You're gonna have X.
Nah, not this one.
Nothing else.
Nah, else is going to be the next step. I want to make sure everyone gets the ifs. So,
Because I tried else. And it's like not working.
oh really? Okay, we'll get there. So, now I want one of you to explain to me what you see on the board. So, let's get someone who hasn't spoken in a while. You. Would you mind explaining to me what you see right here? Yes. No problem. But if you were to let's say you saw this for the first time and you're trying to understand what's going on in this JavaScript.
Just understand the console is in between HTML file and the JavaScript. So if you give a solar, so it just appears solar in the console.
Correct. So that's one thing. What else from like line 12? What's going on in line 12?
Shows you you click I don't know how to say it.
No problem. On line 12, we have a selector. We're selecting a button or multiple buttons in this particular scenario. You'll see on line 5, which is commented out, we had a hashtag that selects one button. But because we're using a dot notation, we're saying for all the buttons on the screen, that would be slate and solar, we're going to attach an on-click event. So if any of those buttons are clicked, then we're going to do this work over here. Thanks. Line 14, who wants to take a stab at that? Yeah. Line 14.
So what's going on is that they're establishing so just explain exactly what they're looking at.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so we're grabbing the how do I describe it? It's kind of like we're
And here's a hint. The keyword this denotes the object being interacted with at that time.
so we're establishing so the variable thing is what we established as what we're going to be editing, and then this is what we're going to be clicking on, and then attribute ideas.
Cool. Yes. So this would be so this would be the button that we're clicking, as you said, and the attribute that we're getting from that button would be the ID. And so in our scenario right now is that we're associating that with a variable called theme, because when we do inspect over here, if we look at those elements, those two buttons have their own unique IDs, and we're just going to get the ID from them by using the attribute function. Now, what's going on line 17? You in the back.
Literally any other line. So I think this is where we define, or we're referring back to the URL that's defined with that unit.
No, we're referring back to the HTML document, yes.
Okay, yes.
But what are we referring to?
Like not the I mean, I know it says style sheet, but do that for what's linked, I guess, from the
Well, I mean, even just like, let's say you got someone sent you this JavaScript, they didn't send you the HTML. You know at a minimal level that you see that this is a jQuery select. This is jQuery, and is using the selector syntax. You know we're referencing something called style sheet, and it's an ID. It's unique. So it's not a group of theme style sheets. It's just one. So then later on, you can then go to your HTML and say, okay, where is this object? And after searching around, you'll find that it actually refers to a link. So that's all you really need to know at a minimal level, that you're accessing a specific HTML element called theme style sheet. And we know it's a unique element because it has the hashtag versus the dot notation, which selects a whole bunch of elements. Cool. I feel like people are understanding things over here. So now, line 20. Do you want to explain what's going on line 20? But what's it doing with it? But what's going on at line 20? We know it's an if statement. What else? We're doing a comparison of what? Well, that's after it's evaluated something. What is it evaluated? Nope. So what's going on here is that we're evaluating whether the theme is actually solar. That's what we're saying. Before we log. Because, yes, because it's confirming it. That's what's going on within the brackets. It's saying, if this is true, then do this. So based on the button that got clicked, let's say it's slate. You click the slate button, it's going to come here, it's going to grab the theme from the ID, it's going to put that into the variable theme, and then it's going to have slate. Is slate equal to solar? No. So it's not going to do this logic. It's then going to go to our second if conditional and say, is slate equal to slate? Yes. Then it's going to console log this out. That's what's happening. We're creating divergent logic within our JavaScript. So now we've done that in two if conditionals, but it's kind of messy because we only have two cases to worry about. If you only have two cases to worry about, you don't necessarily need to have it confirm whether it's slate, because it's either going to be solar or it's going to be slate. You don't need this second if conditional. So we're going to remove that and replace that with else. So I would like you guys to do that currently. So we're going to do if theme is equal to solar, and the only other thing can be is slate. So it's going to go into this else block and console log slate. So save this and then open it up in your browser and then click both buttons. And you'll see that it'll hit both conditionals.
So if there were three.
If there were three, then you would do else if. And then you add your brand new conditional.
Oh, okay.
That's how that works.
Without, could you do if else instead of if?
No, the syntax is else if.
Okay.
So it's, oh, wait. What did you say?
Could you do if?
Oh,
if,
like add another if over here?
Instead of saying else if and then else, just saying else.
Just saying if like this?
Yeah, and having those three like that.
Yes.
Is that
You could technically do this, but based on, it really depends on the behavior of your website. If this is, so usually these else ifs and elses work in a group. So if there was like a space, this is like one group of conditionals, and this is like, and the other one is like another group of conditionals. So this might be comparing something completely different, but they usually work in tangent as a group.
Okay.
Yeah.
And if you wanted a bunch of ifs in between the first if and the last else,
Yes.
you do else if else.
Correct. That's how that works.
And the correct way to do too would be if and else.
Correct. Yep. Cool.
Should it have changed? Like I didn't say in my last meeting.
No, it's going to do exactly what it did before, where
And the
it,
unsolved is referencing the line itself, right?
the what?
The thing to go up when you're in the developer tools.
Oh, over here?
Yeah.
Yeah.
When it says unsolved JS, that's the line of code, right?
Yes, exactly. That is initiating or working on. Because console log is solar is on 21, console log slate is on 24. All right. So what I want you guys to do next is I want you guys to create a third button and give that a style of what? Let's see. Let's pick a style. Boot swatch. Darkly? Yeah, let's use darkly. I'm going to add that over here just so that you guys don't have to go to boot swatch or whatever. But we're going to use darkly. I want you guys to go to your HTML. I want you to create another button called darkly. And then on the back end, on your JavaScript, I want you guys to use else if for that third case.
Doesn't matter the order, like, or should it be in the same order?
Should be in within that group because it's like a group of elements now that you're comparing. So you're gonna have if solar, else if darkly, else if cerulean, else if whatever, and then the final case would be whatever you want, which in our case would be slate. So let's copy and paste this button. We're going to name it darkly. Darkly button. And then in our JavaScript, we're just going to refer to theme triple equals darkly. Is anyone running into any issues with this one? Order does not matter. You could have darkly up here, and that doesn't matter. You could have solar over here. It's still going to check all of them.
You don't have semicolons after the brackets, just after the IPs, right? Like that.
Yeah, that's it. Yes.
Okay.
Yes, you don't need semicolons. Oh, something else. Oh, I see.
Let me see. Potentially use potential after. So you don't need to specify that. Oh, okay. It's saying all of the or not so it's kind of like a oh, I see.
Check my
Well, I noticed that neither of the
And then all else
probably know because I'm installed.
Get spaces at all.
Yeah, it's like, oh, okay, I read that.
I just, yeah,
Well, I just looked to see what it was, because it wasn't either. Because when you click sleep, it's right.
it says
I'm
on
Noah.
line 27 is my issue, so.
And your TA would get
So 27.
Alright, so you're like, yeah. For like, Tuesdays,
Space
Thursdays,
out.
Tuesdays and Saturdays. Okay, so that's.
It doesn't matter what one is.
Oh. Or like, I mean, we're none of us are. Right. We muddle through HTML and CSS. Yeah. Oh, you did the job. This class.
All right. So we're gonna move on to the final part of this activity before we do more interesting things. You didn't get it? Let me walk over.
This is the space between this
Yeah.
space between the if and
It's telling me line 27. Oh, I thought you said the order didn't matter.
Well, the order of the else is, the else is always last.
Oh,
Because it's
okay.
like your final one. There's always.
Yeah, because you don't want to hire two people, one person. This is why they want you as designers too. If you can do, if you can design, it's stupid because you see them out there. You know, so you want to hire realistically, you can't do all the activities once a week. You know what I mean? It's like you can save money. You don't save money. Or save the same money.
I swear it's like a scavenger hunt, and it's a really hard scavenger hunt.
It's always a scavenger
It
hunt.
really is.
Because you can't do all these
Okay.
things. Right. It's like you do
What are we gonna do?
Their brains work hard.
visual coding. True.
What is it, puzzles?
Yeah. It doesn't make any sense.
Mm-hmm.
Oh.
Okay. You guys good over here? Are you guys good over here? Oh.
All the aspects.
Oh, so information is not necessarily
And that's a difference.
So I use it I'm more confident
Same
It's like to the edge off.
You know what I mean? And especially when you're like in distance, and like 12 hours time difference.
Oh, yeah.
It's a whole hard where
It's like,
well, it's, I mean, it's the same sort of
look right,
communication
it's the
issues
red,
that
and
all
this is one of those small things you got. They ask for semicolons everywhere.
yeah, what does this mean?
Everything is just like, well, that's the new rule. And I was like, oh,
Yeah. If you dive into front-end development, you'll realize that there's new rules for JavaScript almost every other way.
Oh my god.
All right.
Do they usually override the existing rules? Like, oh,
They try not to. Okay, could I get everybody's attention? We're going to wrap this up and actually replace the href within the conditionals. So, I would like you guys to type this out within each individual case. What? This keeps popping up, so annoying. We are going to take the style link that we created earlier. Well, what didn't create earlier, but have a reference to. It refers to the link tag in our HTML document. We're going to do style link.attr, which means that we're saying for an attribute within the style link, we're going to replace href with the boot swatch URL. And I actually put that in the wrong place. This is slate. This needs to be over here. And I'm going to slack this out to you guys for speed. So I'm going to throw that in discussion. Yeah, just everything else you guys can. So you guys want to copy and paste this line for each of your conditionals, one for solar, one for darkly, and just replace slate with the individual IDs in their else blocks. Yep, I just copy and pasted the link in class discussion.
So for each one, right?
Yep, for each one. For each of them. Because you're going to need a new style per ID. Doesn't matter. And so then, save your JavaScript, open it up in your browser. Whoops, I want to open this one up in my browser. And you'll see we have recreated what we did in the previous exercise. Double check that your URL is correct. Cool. Nice.
So in theory, we don't need this console logging.
You don't need the console logging. Console logging was for your own purposes. Your users would actually see the change.
At least I typed the first one.
I was going to.
Nah, lazy. You said type it in just to kind of.
It will, that's why I wanted to. Yeah, that too. That's why I have that's why it's something I walk away. Walk away.
You'll see something, do something.
Oh, so I removed this whole box.
Yesterday, yeah.
It's just somebody needs to
There is a
And why did it really complicated with the last time we did it?
Okay. So
Usually,
obviously.
first letter is third. Good.
I
using the house all night. And
She's so down
the work and then first night.
She has a local for one. She's got to sleep.
Do not forget, earlier in this exercise, I removed the $sign from this style link over here. This is the variable that you want to change the attribute to. So whatever style link this is has to be reused within your if conditionals. Don't forget, this is case sensitive. Your variables need to be referred to as they were created.
Yeah, that's what happened to me.
Oh. Cool.
I didn't capitalize on it.
Well, you could have just made the length lower.
Well, we keep the template. It's funny to matter. What is like always an active?
We didn't remove the original $sign link.
Yes, that's
No, it's not. Oh yeah, it should be. That's what I'm saying. Like, why is it? Because there's. You don't.
So what are you trying to say? Everybody sees color differences, so if you've got color issues.
So yeah, I'm not trying to teach you.
No, I know, I just wanna.
It's a preference.
So your friend asked me like, what's the middle name?
Oh my god, I was like, you're She's like, he's so like, about him. You know what I mean? So, and then I remember all of saying, now it's so him. Like, how do I make this about me? You know what I mean? He's actually like really him. Like, younger actually.
Okay, so we're going to keep moving on because there's still a lot of material to get through, and as you guys can see, we're still stuck on last class's exercises. So, just to reiterate, when you guys have an if state, when you guys are using if, you have to provide a conditional that it needs to evaluate. If you're using if with no conditional, nothing will work. You need a conditional. That's why over here we're saying if it is darkly, do this. Else, if it is solar, do this. Else does not need a conditional because else is your catch-all. That says if those other two don't match, just do this by default. This is like default behavior. So we're saying if it's not darkly and it's not solar, it has to be slate. And that could be whatever you guys want. So questions on if conditionals before we move on to pop-ups? Yes, so that's the syntax. You need to always start with the first if, then anything in between if and else, this can be created multiple times. You can have like 1,000 else ifs. That doesn't matter. But you also want to define like a default case. Actually, you don't even have to define a default case. Depends on what your use case is. But if there is a default case where if any of these don't match, then do that. But else is always the last thing in the block. Cool. Questions? All right. We're now done with our list of activities from previous class. And we're going to move on to pop-ups. What is a pop-up? A pop-up is you're going to have a We are looking at 01, the first activity in the activities that I slacked out earlier today. In the popovers HTML, when you open that up in your browser, you should be given a whole bunch of different buttons. And feel free to open it up on your own browsers if you guys want to follow along. But when you click these buttons, you're going to see these different popovers show up on the top, show up on the right, show up on the bottom, show up on the left. This is a bootstrap functionality. You also have like a dismissible pop-up where I think like, wait a second. Oh, if I click the button multiple times, it doesn't dismiss. I have to actually click the popover to dismiss it. For these other ones, I can click the button multiple times, and that enables it, disables it. This one is not dismissible until you actually click the popover. So just play around with that on your own. The syntax for that is in the HTML, where you have to have a data toggle called popover. You have a data placement where you're saying, I want this to pop over on the top, I want this to pop over on the bottom, left, and right. And then you have data content where it says, this is a pop over on top, that's the text that we see over here. And the way, you can't just have these keys and expect it to work. You have to initiate things through JavaScript. So at the very bottom of this page, you'll have a function, an anonymous function that gets executed as the page is loaded that says jQuery data toggle popover dot popover. But it's within a script tag. So this is like inline CSS. You can think of it like that. We're not pulling it out into a separate JavaScript file. We're doing it inline within our HTML.
And that's good practice.
Debatable. Everything is debatable. So this is what actually enables the popovers. If this did not exist, and I refresh the page, you'll see when I click the buttons, nothing happens. You need this bootstrap JavaScript to get things to work. So I'm going to uncomment it, refresh the page. Now things work. So I'll give you guys like 5 minutes to play around with this, uncommenting this, commenting this out, taking a look at the syntax, which would be data toggle, data placement, data content. And let me know if you have any questions, because the next activity, you'll actually be editing these popovers. So get very familiar with what these keys do, change them around, replace the top, the bottom, whatever. I'll give you 5 minutes to get familiar. Question?
This is in the activity file that's not this one. Don't forget the activities folder is in the class discussions Slack.
So power on the bottom is now going to the left. And power on the left is now going to the bottom.
I hope that's not I think it's made up. So these are
I will put it on my personal Google Drive so that everybody it's taking me a lot of bullshit to get them off myself.
just comment out, you just put forward to slash.
You're talking about in HTML?
Yeah, HTML.
Within HTML, no, you got to use this syntax. So anything between.
That you just copy and paste, is that what you do?
I use a shortcut. On my Mac, I highlight what I want to comment out and do command /. Yeah.
Well, they have about images. It's kind of like images.
And then the unregistered just.
Right now, that's literally what people say.
So what about that's all?
Wow, I was
That's the name of the button. That's the, oh, no.
I like very
It's kind of like when you do Express. Remember, you close the, you write the words, and then you end it with a close tab. Yeah, so I think that's the words physically seen before you design it. You could change the word. I can't decide.
Okay. All right. So, did you guys have any questions on pop over HTML file? You're familiar with what bootstrap keys you need to use. You need to use data toggle, data content. What was the other one? Data placement. So yeah, it's pretty straightforward. This next activity that we're going to work on is a lot less straightforward. So right now I'm opening up exercise 2. We're going to be working on the unsolved section. And in this section, this is what we pretty much want. When we reload the page, it immediately provides us a popover with obviously the placement is bottom, and the toggle content is going to be this little form. Within this form, it says please sign in with the X button. It has a username input tag. It has a password input tag, and then it has a submit button. Correct, because you're probably opening the unsolved. This is the solved.
Yes.
I'm just showing you what you guys need to do. No problem. So when I input information over here and I click submit, it gets rid of the popover and it changes the color of the button, and it also changes the text of the button to signed in. So what we care about over here is that we have a form. Within this form, there are 2 input tags, one for username, one for password, and then we have a button. A button that is called submit that has an on-click event. That on-click event has a function that does this. This function replaces the button color with green, it replaces the button text with signed in, and it uses a different symbol, and it gets rid of the popover. So there's a couple things this on-click event does. But remember, this is all stuff we've done before. Say what?
We're trying to close it, not build it.
So for this one, we're doing a bit of both. We're adding content to the popover, because what you guys will have available to you, well, you have both available to you, but I want you to try and do this on your own, is you're going to have signed in, which does nothing. I will give you the very first hint. In your unsolved HTML, if you scroll to the bottom, you need to add your script tag link to your custom popover. What's in custom popover? This stuff. This stuff says I'm going to grab this specific button with the ID signed in. I'm going to use the popover syntax from Bootstrap. And within that, I have a JavaScript object that has multiple keys and multiple values. You guys saw in the previous activity where we're replacing the href, we only had one key, one value, one for the key that we want to change, which is href, and the value, which was the Bootstrap URL. In this particular example, we have multiple values. This is just because this is what Bootstrap needs to create the popover. It needs a title. It needs content. It needs us to render the HTML tags within our content and our title to be real HTML tag elements. We're saying the placement is going to be bottom and the trigger is going to be manual. Once it has that information, it's then going to do .popover show and then show the popover. The difference here is that we're not using data toggle, we're not using data content, and we're not using data placement. We're doing that all within JavaScript. Question?
Yeah, so something like Robo, we don't have that solved. We just want to do that.
Pretty much. And actually, let's take a look at that because I haven't actually looked at that. Bootstrap popover. Let's see what that looks like. Popovers in Bootstrap. Scroll. Okay, this is what we saw before, which just activates a popover, assuming you're using HTML tags. But if you're doing this within JavaScript, let's scroll. Here we go. It's going to grab the example button and it's going to do .popover like we're doing over here. And then you're going to supply an object of options. These, I'll just slack out the URL link.
Yeah, but I think we're on the
Yeah, I kept, yes, I just scrolled down to the usage. Question?
Yeah, no, I was just going to say, so Bootstrap, the first suggestion, or the first thing that they gave us were inline HTML.
You mean all this other stuff?
No, the very first one at the top.
Oh.
That was for the HTML.
Over here.
Right.
Yes, this was for the HTML tags. This is for like the most simplistic case. This is what we saw in the previous exercise where we had the data placement and data content tags in the buttons, and then we're just activating them with this script, JavaScript.
But we want to use it for...
But now we want to do more custom things. So we're going to go to usage within JavaScript, and we're going to provide a list of options. Those options, as you can see, is animation. Do you want this to fade in, fade out? It's a Boolean, true by default. You can have it be false. You're going to have content. I'm going to go back to our custom so we can follow along. I'll make this smaller. We have content, which we have over here, which would be, if given, it will set to the element that the popover is attached to. We can provide a delay. We can say render the HTML tags in our content or our titles to real HTML tags. We're going to provide a placement, auto, top, bottom, left, right. They have selectors, they have templates, they have a whole bunch of different options. But what we care about right now is just these 5. That the popover has a title, it has content that we want to replace, it's going to render our tags into HTML objects. This is where your form is going to live. You're going to put your form, HTML form within this content. We're going to say it's going to place it at the bottom, and it's going to trigger it based on the on click. And then it's going to do popover show. So, how do we get our custom popover and unsolved to show exactly what's in here right now? What do we need to do? What's up? Nope. I just wanted to show same here, and you can enter your own HTML inside this box. I wanted to use this JavaScript file. How do we get our HTML file to use this JavaScript file? Can you say that a little louder? We need to link it. Our HTML file cannot use custom.js if there is no JavaScript link. So how would we do so? we would add a script tag at the bottom of the HTML file within the body. I forget the syntax. Let's go take a look at syntax. Let's see. There we go. The syntax? If you just Google, like, I don't know, HTML script tag, you'll find it. Or just look at previous examples. It's always the same. You need, just like how you have the link tag for CSS, you have the script tag for JavaScript. And then you just replace source with the name of your JavaScript, which would be our file, because it's in the same directory structure as our HTML. Or it could be a URL, whatever you want. But the very first thing you need to do is tell this HTML file, hey, there's custom JavaScript I need you to use. Capital P matters. Everything is case sensitive. So once we include our custom JavaScript and we refresh the page, now you can see it's going to activate that popover, which has all of that default information that we saw earlier, which is you can enter your own HTML inside the backticks and customize your header, and also same here. This is all the stuff you have over here. If you are if that's not working for you, let me know. We can get the TAs to take a look.
That's popping up like that because you have it manual, so that you don't have to click anything. That's why it's popping up.
Yes, exactly.
But if you hadn't clicked, then you have to press it, and then it'll show that.
Yep. Case sensitive, everybody. Okay. So for everybody else, we need to now build what we saw earlier. So I'm going to slack out the instructions within the discussions channel. And we're going to work on this for the next 20 minutes. These are the instructions. And I will have the solved solution up on the board for you guys to see. This is what we want to build. You're going to replace the title with please sign in. Replace the content with this form that has 2 input boxes, username, password, and a submit button, which is going to include an on-click event. Yes, you need to build this HTML form within your JavaScript. Yep. Nope. Because you'll see in your custom popover, this content option right here has an HTML tag. That's why you have this HTML true option. We're saying if there's HTML tags within here, render it like it's real HTML on the front end. That's why same here, where is it? That's why same here is actually a P tag. When we inspect this, it's a P tag, same here. I could also include, I could turn this to be bold, like so, and then refresh the page. Now same here is bold. It's turning those tags into real HTML. That's what HTML true does. And as the instructions, take a second to read the instructions because they're very verbose. This URL that they provide you, the options, which is what we were looking at earlier, all these options, this will be your best friend. Read the options. Read what the descriptions say. It will help expedite a lot of the questions that you're going to come up with. Question?
bad. I have a slight dyslexia, so I'm down talking in those situations.
It's actually what's happening here is,
Yeah. Safely sign in.
so that's a bad thing. So, so, because the explanation will make sense to you right now. Just pretend that it's
That's probably for the best.
If you use single quotes or double quotes right now, there's a thing with string that makes you use plus signs and stuff like that. So this will allow you to just write it plain.
Remember, this is a tough exercise. It's supposed to be tough. If you have any questions, let us know. We'll try to open them up.
That's pretty easy.
That's the word right there. Concept.
Oops, I put it in the wrong way.
That's how they do it sometimes. It's just an easier way to write marked up inside your jazz. Triple back.
I put it there and it's wrong.
Hmm?
Oh, within the P tag, that's what I so you keep the P tag and it's the same here. You can do that. And then got it. Yes. Yeah, within the P tag. You want to do it without?
Question. Whether what? Yes. The form within the P tag. No, you don't need that P tag. No. You can completely remove all of this content and just add your form right here. Yeah. Don't forget, you don't have to do it inline. You could just stretch out these backticks like so, and then do your form like this. Mm-hmm. Oh, so that's still gonna work, because I mean the P tag isn't gonna break anything. It's just it seems strange why you have a form. Yeah. Okay.
get rid of
So get rid of the pens, the tiny little, little.
no.
So have the little tiny little hashes or whatever. And place that. Okay, it didn't work when I got rid of those little tags. And then it says we will never share information. And that's it. So how did you get the X?
The README will provide you insight to that. Well, not the README, the instructions that I slacked out,
Oh,
which also just happens to be a README file within the number 2 exercise. Mm-hmm. Remember, the title can also take HTML, just like the content. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, well, what we would do this, and then ask them if we could please sign in. We want to do.
Oh, okay.
I just copied and pasted on his thing. Well, actually, I went to Boost, I loaded it. I got the, I don't know if it works. And I put it in front of, sign in. So right after the sign in, I put type button, close, span, and then the button, and slash button. I don't know if it works.
There you
No, after he signed in. Doesn't work. The icon is there. We're supposed to make these things creative, right? It should be username and password, not email address. Don't forget it's username and password, not email address. So we have to change that to username. Not the one.
is sign in. Right after that, in, put a space in it. Yeah, it's right after it's a sign.
Don't we want to add the different boxes? Yeah, but now it's like all. Yeah, what?
Yeah, that's. Yeah, let's do it right now. And then I can get that.
Oh. You're missing the comma.
Oh.
Yeah. Yep.
It's something in
Now you can work on one of the
it's in the research.
You're just gonna put all of this stuff right there. Okay. So now you want to
Yeah.
So you're doing the JS right now, and we're. So actually, like, are you doing line, starting on line 28, or are you doing that? And then we start with the JS, the dollar sign, right? And then we're creating an event.
Oh, that's the.
So it's the, yeah, I see it.
Oh, no, we can add it.
And then it says dot clicks, and then it has the parentheses function, friends, scribble, friends.
Oh, I see.
No, what I was doing is just make my entire form go away. So it's not closed, it's still button. What's the button?
Just for the
Yeah. Still may close my name. So I want to refresh and then we're getting close. We're just trying to figure out like how we're supposed to close the button X close by looking at like that link. Oh, sorry, the link. Let's see right now. It's close as.
I believe there's a close function, something like that. Let me look.
Let me see.
So
Yeah. When you guys are working on the close to pop over, a little bit of a hint is that you need to refer to the pop over again by grabbing that element and then doing pop over, what is it, hide? Hide.
We did it right under trigger, and it worked.
Right under what?
Like as an attribute, not as an attribute, as a
On-click event?
Yeah.
Yeah, you're supposed to have it as an on-click event. So what it's asking you to have this X button over here be an on-click event. So you're going to refer to this button that you have created within the popover. On-click of this button is going to do this action. It's going to grab the sign-in button, pop over, and hide it. Just like how we're showing it, we're going to hide it when X is clicked. So that's just a hint. But this needs to be within an on-click event for your X button. That function is going to do this work. A delay?
Yeah, it worked.
Well, I mean, I guess there's multiple ways.
I mean, we didn't. So that's first I tried to.
Oh, if you don't want that, then just get rid of the show. Because God can say show this pop over. So get rid of pop over, not pop over.
it's a dot close, not
Yeah.
Diego's.
Yeah, that's saying show the pop over.
Oh yeah,
So now it's
So you
like
can
just
get rid of
the other function, right?
JavaScript only does what you tell it to do.
okay.
Oh, so
You have your dot close.
You have the show 500. It was going to show X. Yes.
oh, sorry, classical close. Yes.
But
So in that function, you can just copy and paste that code out. Grab the sign-in button.
Do I put it between these parentheses? Is what you're saying?
Yes, because don't forget the function has to have logic in these things. Logic is going to execute when that button is clicked, it would be pop over.
So you're saying right in here is
Oh,
so in the brackets here.
Yeah.
Okay, so then it would be telling it here to do the, and you're saying sign in, right?
Yes.
Okay.
It's going to be that button.
Now we need to do another one. When you click on the submit button.
oh, you didn't do that.
So you see those show, except there's something that pop over.
Where's the show? Oh, I see. Yes, pop over show, and then we're saying sign in, pop over.
And this has to be straight. Show is a string.
Oh, so it's gotta have this.
Yeah, but it's a string.
Okay, so let's see.
Go into your brackets. Save it.
Alright. Now, we want the submit to do the same thing. We want the submit. And then we want it to submit.
You have to do like a sound sign or the sign needs to have, yeah, because it's the same kind of value. It's probably that ID.
It was there. It was there.
So now,
Yeah,
we
it was pricing
want
next time.
to. This is
What do you got, George? What do you got, George? So flat, it's little George. Make sure we gotta get you the clothes. Oh man, now you gotta get the white, bro. Alright. No, go to style.
Right. So,
That shows you gotta make them get you next. So go to Oh, you have a period? Yeah, Liberty. There's now the base. So now, down here, get out of all your one sign. Yeah, okay. One sign, period.
Are you going to submit that?
Period, because it's a class. So now the one sign you do,
Submit a button, you have sign in the card, that needs a minute.
no.
Yeah, that's why I'm trying to read where I can't remember. I got that. It's a click, it's a click function. But I don't think it's a close function. Is it for submit or is it a close function again? Maybe it's another, because the button doesn't have.
Oh, we actually zoomed right past the ending time. Let's see. Yes. Let's take a short break. Let's take a 10-minute break for lunch, and then we'll start class back up at 12:35. Cool. And then we will do CSS transitions. So.
Now, copy this. See where it says grayed out. I'm sorry, up here. This here we have to grayed out the money, sign in, hop over that, copy that.
No, your form. So you see how you pop over and start on these view tags,
It's almost like a 10-minute walk in itself.
the whole form is within the pocket. It's part of the content. You just build your form up, take care of it all.
I can build it in
Yeah.
Oh, I can do that. Wherever I can do it.
So,
Same way I would do it.
so you just go to this.
The same thing I was doing the HTML up here.
Exactly. It's a little messy, but that's what you can do.
Yeah, right. Sure. Oh, when did you stop clicking on that? So,
12:35.
8 minutes. Okay.
We do a very short break. This is like a lot of material.
Right. Yeah.
So the way